Jack Monroe lived a quiet life on his ranch in Wyoming. It wasn't much to look at, just a modest house surrounded by rolling hills, endless fields of grass, and a few barns for his horses and cattle. To anyone passing by, Jack seemed like an ordinary man. He worked hard during the day, fixing fences, feeding animals, and tending to his land. At night, he'd sit on his porch, sipping coffee as the stars lit up the sky. But those who knew him from his past understood that there was nothing ordinary about Jack Monroe. Before retiring to this peaceful corner of the world, Jack had been one of the most feared soldiers in Delta Force, a secretive unit known for handling missions too dangerous for regular troops. His reputation was legendary among his peers. Some called him a ghost because of how silently he moved. Others said he was unstoppable, capable of taking down entire enemy squads without breaking a sweat. After decades of service, Jack decided it was time to leave the chaos behind. He bought the ranch, far away from cities and people, hoping to live out his days in peace. For years, that's exactly what he did. But all of that changed on a cold autumn evening when the sky itself seemed to split open. It started just after sunset. The horizon glowed with soft shades of orange and pink as the last light of the day faded. Jack was outside checking on his livestock when he noticed something unusual. High above the distant mountains, strange lights flickered against the darkening sky. At first he thought they might be satellites or maybe even drones conducting some kind of government experiment. Jack had seen plenty of weird things in his life, so he didn't jump to conclusions right away. Instead, he grabbed a pair of binoculars from his truck and climbed onto the roof of his barn for a better view. Through the lenses, what he saw made his blood run cold. There were ships, dozens of them, descending slowly toward Earth. They weren't airplanes or helicopters. Their shapes were sleek and metallic, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. As they drew closer, Jack realized they weren't human-made. These ships belonged to someone or something else entirely. The ground beneath his feet began to tremble slightly, accompanied by a low, humming sound that vibrated through the air. It wasn't loud, but it was constant, almost hypnotic. Jack's instincts kicked in immediately. Over the years, he'd learned to trust his gut, and right now, it was screaming at him to prepare for trouble. He jumped down from the barn and hurried inside his house. Once there, he locked the doors and pulled the heavy blackout curtains shut. Then he went to work. Jack's home wasn't just a simple farmhouse. Beneath its wooden exterior lay layers of reinforced steel and concrete. Hidden compartments held weapons ranging from pistols to assault rifles, along with enough ammunition to supply a small army. Motion detectors lined the perimeter of the property, connected to automated floodlights and traps designed to slow down intruders. Jack had built these defenses long ago, back when paranoia about potential threats still lingered from his military days. Now those preparations felt eerily prescient. As the minutes ticked by, the hum grew louder and the trembling intensified. Jack peeked through a crack in the curtain and watched as 3 of the ships hovered directly over his ranch. Their undersides opened like gaping mouths, revealing rows of bright lights and strange machinery. From each ship, figures emerged. Tall, thin beings clad in shimmering armor that reflected the moonlight. They carried weapons unlike anything Jack had ever seen, devices that pulsed with energy and emitted faint electrical sparks. Jack clenched his jaw. Whatever these creatures were, they weren't here to negotiate. Their movements were deliberate, calculated as if they already knew exactly where to go and what to do. One group headed straight for the water tank near the barn, while another marched toward the main house. Jack tightened his grip on the rifle slung across his shoulder. He had faced countless enemies in his life, but this was different. This wasn't just another mission, it was survival. When the aliens reached the front door, they paused briefly. A small device in one of their hands emitted a high-pitched whine, and within seconds, the lock melted into a pool of liquid metal. The door swung open, revealing the dim interior of Jack's living room. Inside, everything was silent. Too silent. The aliens stepped cautiously into the darkness, their weapons raised. They scanned the room with glowing eyes, searching for any sign of movement. Suddenly, Motion-activated floodlights blazed to life, flooding the space with harsh white light. The aliens recoiled, momentarily blinded. That's when Jack struck. Moving like a shadow, he appeared behind the nearest alien and drove a combat knife deep into its throat. The creature gurgled and collapsed, its body twitching as greenish fluid leaked from the wound. Before the others could react, Jack spun around and snapped the neck of a second alien with brutal efficiency. The remaining four scrambled to retaliate, firing their energy weapons wildly. Beams of light tore through furniture and walls, sending splinters of wood flying everywhere. But Jack was faster. Using the chaos to his advantage, he ducked behind an overturned table and returned fire with his own weapon. Bullets ricocheted off the alien's armor, but not all hits were misses. One shot found a gap in the plating, piercing the alien's chest. It let out a shrill scream before collapsing. Another beam grazed Jack's arm, searing his skin, but he ignored the pain and pressed forward. With precise strikes, he eliminated the rest of the invaders, leaving their bodies scattered across the floor. Breathing heavily, Jack surveyed the carnage. His once pristine living room was now a war zone, filled with smoke, debris, and the acrid smell of burnt flesh. He knelt beside one of the fallen aliens and examined its armor. It was unlike anything he'd encountered before, smooth, lightweight, yet incredibly durable. Still, it wasn't invincible. If targeted correctly, these creatures could be killed. Grabbing one of their rifles, Jack tested its weight. It felt foreign in his hands, but also strangely intuitive. Whoever, or whatever, these beings were, they clearly hadn't expected resistance. Especially not from someone like Jack Monroe. Outside, the hum of the ships grew louder, signaling that more aliens were approaching. Jack knew this was only the beginning. Whatever these invaders wanted, they wouldn't stop until they got it, or until they were stopped themselves. And Jack had no intention of letting them win. The battle inside Jack Monroe's house had been swift and brutal, but it was far from over. Outside, the alien ships loomed ominously in the night sky, their glowing underbellies casting an otherworldly light across the ranch. The invaders hadn't come alone. Dozens of their kind were now swarming across the property, moving with mechanical precision. They weren't just soldiers. They were explorers, scavengers, and conquerors all rolled into one. And they had chosen Jack's land as their first target. Jack stood in the wreckage of his living room, blood dripping from a shallow wound on his arm, where an energy beam had grazed him. His breathing was steady despite the chaos around him. Years of combat training had taught him how to stay calm under pressure. He glanced at the fallen aliens sprawled across his floor, their strange armor gleaming faintly even in death. There, weapons lay scattered beside them, humming softly as if alive. Jack picked up one of the rifles again, studying its design. It was sleek and compact, unlike anything humans had ever created. He tested its weight, aiming it toward the wall experimentally. A small burst of energy shot out, leaving a charred hole in the plaster. "This is going to be fun," Jack muttered to himself, a grim smile tugging at the corner of his lips. But he knew better than to celebrate prematurely. The aliens who had entered his house were just scouts, a vanguard sent to assess the situation. Now that they were dead, reinforcements would arrive soon. Jack needed to act fast. He grabbed a few more of the alien weapons and stuffed them into a duffel bag along with spare magazines scavenged from their belts. Then he moved to the basement, descending wooden stairs that creaked under his boots. Down there, hidden behind a false wall, was his arsenal, a collection of firearms, explosives, and tactical gear accumulated over decades of service. Jack strapped on body armor reinforced with Kevlar plates, loaded several high-capacity magazines for his rifle, and slung grenades onto his belt. When he emerged back upstairs, he looked less like a retired rancher and more like a soldier preparing for war. Outside, the aliens were already mobilizing. More of their ships hovered above the ranch, scanning the area with beams of light that swept across the landscape like searchlights. Groups of armored figures fanned out, systematically securing every inch of the property. They didn't seem concerned about stealth anymore. They were here to take what they wanted by force. One group approached the barn, blasting open the doors with energy blasts powerful enough to splinter wood and metal alike. Inside, they found feed bins, tools, and farming equipment, but no sign of resistance. Satisfied, they began loading supplies onto hovering platforms controlled remotely by their technology. Jack watched all of this from a distance, concealed behind thick curtains in his fortified home. He had rigged cameras around the property, years ago, part of his preparations for potential threats. Now those cameras gave him eyes everywhere, allowing him to track the invaders' movements without exposing himself. From his position, he could see that the aliens were efficient but predictable. They moved in straight lines, rarely deviating from their planned routes unless provoked. This made them vulnerable to ambushes, if you knew where to strike. Jack decided to test their weaknesses further. Slipping out through a hidden exit in the back of the house, he crept silently toward the barn. The aliens inside were busy dismantling equipment, oblivious to his presence. Jack waited until two of them turned their backs before striking. With quick, practiced motions, he hurled a grenade into the barn. The explosion was deafening, shaking the ground and sending flames licking at the rafters. The aliens inside screamed, or at least they made sounds that might have passed for screams, as they stumbled out into the open, disoriented and wounded. Jack didn't give them time to recover. Using the shadows as cover, he picked them off, one by one with precise shots from his rifle. Each hit shattered their armor, revealing soft, fleshy bodies beneath. For all their advanced technology, these creatures weren't invincible after all. Word of the attack spread quickly among the invaders. Enraged by the loss of yet another squad, the aliens launched a full-scale assault on the house. Energy beams rained down from the sky, setting fire to fields and reducing barns to smoldering ruins. Explosions rocked the earth, turning the peaceful ranch into a war zone. Jack retreated deeper into his compound, activating defensive systems he'd installed. Over the years, automated turrets mounted around the perimeter opened fire, cutting down waves of attackers. Mines buried in strategic locations detonated, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The aliens responded with overwhelming firepower, blasting through walls and tearing apart anything in their path. But Jack's defenses held, for now. Despite the destruction unfolding around him, Jack remained focused. He had fought in countless battles during his Delta Force days, and he understood the importance of controlling the tempo of a fight. Instead of meeting the aliens head-on, he used guerrilla tactics to wear them down. Hidden tunnels dug beneath. The ranch allowed him to move unseen, popping up behind enemy lines to launch surprise attacks. Each skirmish whittled away at their numbers, forcing them to divert resources to hunt for him. By dawn, the once pristine ranch was reduced to smoldering ruins, but the invaders had suffered heavy losses. Dozens of their soldiers lay dead or injured, their advanced weapons useless against Jack's cunning and experience. Still, Jack knew this wasn't enough. These aliens weren't ordinary enemies. They were backed by technology far beyond Earth's capabilities. Reinforcements were arriving constantly, larger ships descending from the sky bristling with cannons and drones. This wasn't just a raid anymore. It was an invasion. And Jack couldn't hold out forever against such overwhelming odds. As the Yao sun rose over the horizon, painting the scarred landscape in shades of gold and red, Jack took stock of his situation. His home was in ruins, his animals scattered or killed, and his supplies dwindling. But he still had one advantage: knowledge. Every encounter with the aliens had taught him something new about their strengths and weaknesses. Their armor was tough but not impenetrable. Their weapons were devastating but slow to recharge. Most importantly, they underestimated humanity. They thought they could march in, take what they wanted, and leave without facing any real opposition. Jack intended to prove them wrong. He climbed to the roof of what remained of his house, surveying the battlefield below. Alien soldiers patrolled the grounds cautiously, wary of further traps. Ships hovered overhead, their engines roaring as they prepared for another wave of attacks. Jack tightened his grip on the alien rifle he carried. He had survived worse odds before, and he wasn't about to give up now. If anything, the destruction of his ranch only fueled his determination. These invaders had come to his home, destroyed everything he cared about, and shown no mercy. Now it was personal. For the first time since the invasion began, Jack allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought about the quiet life he had tried to build here, the peace he had worked so hard to achieve. All of that was gone now, replaced by smoke, fire, and the stench of burnt flesh. Yet even in the midst of devastation, Jack felt a strange sense of clarity. This was who he was meant to be, a protector, a fighter, someone willing to stand between innocent people and those who sought to harm them. Whether it was human terrorists, rogue militias, or extraterrestrial invaders, the principle remained the same. You don't let them win, not ever. With renewed resolve, Jack descended from the roof and returned to the basement. There, among his weapons and gear, he found a secure satellite link hidden in a locked compartment. The device connected him to a network of former comrades spread across the globe, men and women who owed him favors or simply respected his reputation. Jack powered it on, typing in a series of commands that encrypted his message. Within minutes, he transmitted a distress signal detailing the situation at the ranch. He included coordinates, descriptions of the alien forces, and notes on their tactics and vulnerabilities. He ended the transmission with a single sentence: "I need backup." Hours passed as Jack continued to fend off waves of attackers. Exhaustion weighed heavily on him, but adrenaline kept him moving. Finally, just as the aliens launched another assault, the skies above lit up with streaks of light. Parachutes blossomed against the blue canvas of the heavens as a team of elite operatives descended onto the ranch. Among them were snipers, engineers, medics, and demolitions experts, all ready to follow Jack's lead. Together they formed a formidable force, capable of turning the tide of the battle. Jack stepped out of the shadows, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. The leader of the team, a grizzled veteran named Sarah Chen, nodded at him in silent acknowledgement. No words were needed. Everyone present understood the stakes. Humanity's survival depended on stopping these invaders, not just here, but wherever they planned to strike next. As the team regrouped and prepared for the next phase of the fight, Jack felt a flicker of hope. He had spent years trying to escape the violence of his past, but now he realized that sometimes running wasn't an option. Sometimes you had to stand your ground, even if it meant sacrificing everything you loved. The aliens may have brought war to Earth, but they had underestimated the resilience of the human spirit. And Jack Monroe was determined to show them exactly why. The arrival of Sarah Chen and her team marked a turning point in the battle for Jack Monroe's ranch. For the first time since the aliens landed, Jack wasn't fighting alone. The reinforcements, elite operatives handpicked from across the globe, brought with them not only fresh manpower but also advanced weapons, technical expertise, and strategic minds capable of taking on an extraterrestrial threat. Yet even with their help, the odds remained daunting. The aliens weren't just soldiers, they were part of a highly organized force equipped with technology far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. As the team regrouped inside what was left of Jack's fortified house, Sarah took charge. She was a no-nonsense leader, her sharp eyes scanning the room as she issued orders. "All right, listen up," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We've got one shot at this. These bastards are tough, but they're not invincible. We hit them hard, fast, and smart. No heroics, we stick to the plan." Jack nodded, his expression grim. He'd seen enough of these creatures to know that Sarah was right. Going rogue might work for him alone, but against overwhelming numbers, teamwork was essential. "They rely on their tech," he added, addressing the group. "Their armor is strong, but it has weak points, joints, seams, gaps near the neck. Aim for those, and don't waste ammo. They've got shields that can absorb hits if you don't aim carefully." Sarah glanced at Jack, impressed by his tactical insight despite the exhaustion etched into his face. "Good intel," she said. "Now let's use it." She spread out a map of the property on a table, marking key locations where alien forces were concentrated. "We'll split into 3 teams. Team 1 will take the east side, draw their attention while planting decoys. Team 2 secures the barn and sets up traps. Team 3, led by Jack, will infiltrate their command ship. If we can disable their central hub, we might cripple their entire operation." The plan was risky, but there was no other choice. With everyone briefed, the teams dispersed, moving quickly and silently through the wreckage of the ranch. Jack led Team 3 toward the largest alien vessel, a towering behemoth hovering above the fields like a metallic mountain. Its surface shimmered faintly, reflecting the morning sunlight, and strange symbols glowed along its hull. It was clear this ship served as the invaders' nerve center, coordinating their attacks and relaying commands to ground forces. Getting close wouldn't be easy. The area around the ship was heavily guarded, with patrols sweeping back and forth and drones scanning for movement. Jack signaled for his team to wait, crouching low behind a pile of rubble. He studied the guards' patterns, noting how they moved in predictable loops. After a few minutes, he turned to his teammates. "Follow my lead," he whispered. "Stay low and move only when I say." Using the cover of smoke and debris, Jack led the way, darting between hiding spots with the precision of a predator stalking its prey. When a patrol passed dangerously close, he froze, signaling for his team to do the same. The aliens didn't notice them, continuing their sweep without pause. As soon as they were out of sight, Jack pressed forward, inching closer to the ship's landing ramp. Reaching the base of the vessel, Jack spotted a problem. The entrance was sealed tight, protected by a glowing energy field. He frowned, studying the mechanism. "This isn't going to open with brute force," he muttered. Turning to the team's engineer, a wiry man named Marcus, he gestured toward the barrier. "Can you hack it?" Marcus knelt beside the control panel embedded in the wall, pulling out a handheld device connected to wires and circuits. His fingers flew over the keys as he interfaced with the alien system. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, incomprehensible to most but second nature to him. "It's resisting," he said after a tense moment. "But I think I can bypass it. Almost there." Suddenly, an alarm blared, piercing the air. Red lights flashed along the ship's exterior, and the guards outside snapped to attention, raising their weapons. Jack cursed under his breath. "We've been made, move!" The team scattered as energy beams tore through the air, narrowly missing them. Jack returned fire, aiming for the weak points he'd identified earlier. One alien collapsed, clutching its chest where Jack's bullet had found a gap in its armor. Another fell victim to a grenade tossed by Marcus, the explosion sending shards of metal flying. Despite their losses, the aliens kept coming, their sheer numbers overwhelming. "We can't hold them off forever," shouted one of the team members, ducking behind a chunk of concrete as another blast singed the air above him. "Marcus, hurry!" Jack yelled, firing blindly to keep the enemy at bay. "I'm in!" Marcus shouted triumphantly. The energy field flickered and vanished, revealing the dark interior of the ship. Without hesitation, Jack and his team rushed inside, sealing the door behind them. Inside, the atmosphere was eerie, cold, silent, and illuminated by pulsating blue lights. Strange machinery lined the walls, humming softly as if alive. Alien symbols floated in midair, shifting and rearranging themselves like living code. "This place gives me the creeps," muttered one of the operatives, gripping his rifle tightly. "Focus," Jack snapped. "We're here for one thing, their command center. Find it, destroy it, and get out." They moved deeper into the ship, following corridors that twisted and turned unpredictably. Along the way, they encountered resistance, small groups of aliens patrolling the halls. Each skirmish was brief but intense, with Jack leading the charge and ensuring every shot counted. By the time they reached the heart of the vessel, their ammunition was running low, and fatigue was setting in. But none of that mattered. They were close. The command center was unlike anything they'd seen before, a massive chamber filled with holographic displays and floating platforms. At its center stood a towering console, surrounded by glowing orbs that pulsed rhythmically. Jack recognized it immediately as the ship's core, the source of its power and coordination. Destroying it would cripple not only this vessel but potentially disrupt the entire invasion fleet. "Plant the charges," Jack ordered, gesturing to Marcus. "Make sure it goes down hard." As Marcus worked, the rest of the team fanned out, keeping watch for any sign of trouble. Sure enough, it didn't take long for alarms to sound again. Reinforcements poured into the chamber, surrounding them on all sides. Outnumbered and cornered, Jack and his team prepared for a final stand. "Charges are set," Marcus shouted. "We've got 30 seconds. Fall back, Jack commanded, laying down suppressive fire as his team retreated toward the exit. Energy beams flew past them, scorching the walls and floor. One of the operatives went down, hit in the leg, but Jack grabbed him and dragged him along. No one gets left behind. They reached the corridor just as the countdown hit 0. A deafening roar shook the ship, followed by a blinding flash of light. The core exploded, sending shockwaves rippling through the structure. Alarms screamed louder than ever as the ship began to tilt, gravity faltering as systems failed. "Move," Jack barked, leading the way back toward the exit. Behind them, sections of the ship collapsed, sealing off passages and trapping pursuing aliens. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to see, but Jack navigated by memory, guiding his team through the chaos. They burst out onto the landing ramp just as the ship groaned ominously, tilting further. Without waiting, they leapt off, rolling to safety as the vessel crashed to the ground in a fiery explosion. The impact sent tremors through the earth, knocking nearby aliens off their feet. For a moment, everything went silent. The hum of engines, the crackle of energy weapons, the shouts of combatants, all drowned out by the sheer force of the destruction. Then slowly, cheers erupted from the human defenders. Against all odds, they had struck a major blow to the invaders. But Jack knew better than to celebrate too soon. Even as flames consumed the wreckage of the alien ship, more vessels descended. From the sky, reinforcements arriving to replace those lost. The battle wasn't over. It had only escalated. The aliens were relentless, determined to claim Earth no matter the cost. And Jack realized that winning this war wouldn't happen overnight. It would require sacrifice, strategy, and unity on a scale humanity had never seen before. Standing amidst the ruins of his once peaceful ranch, Jack clenched his fists. He had fought for years to escape violence, but now he understood that sometimes peace came at a price. If humanity wanted to survive, it would have to fight, not just for today but for tomorrow. And Jack Monroe, Delta Force legend and reluctant hero, was ready to lead the charge. The explosion of the alien command ship sent shockwaves across the battlefield, momentarily halting the invaders' advance. The towering vessel collapsed in a fiery inferno, sending plumes of black smoke into the sky and scattering debris across the ranch. For the first time since the invasion began, the aliens seemed disoriented, their coordination faltering as their central hub was destroyed. Jack Monroe and his team took advantage of the chaos, regrouping behind what remained of the barn to assess the situation. "Good job," Sarah Chen said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion etched on her face. She glanced at the smoldering wreckage of the ship. "But we're not done yet. Look up." Jack followed her gaze. Dozens of new alien vessels were descending from the heavens, filling the sky with ominous shadows. These ships were larger, more menacing, bristling with cannons and glowing weapons that pulsed with an eerie light. Clearly, the destruction of one command ship wasn't enough to deter them. If anything, it had only enraged them further. "They're bringing in the big guns," Marcus muttered, reloading his rifle. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes remained sharp, focused on the incoming threat. "We can't keep this up forever." "No kidding," another operative chimed in, wiping soot from his face. "We're outnumbered, outgunned, and running, low on supplies. What's the plan now?" Jack clenched his jaw. He knew they couldn't hold out indefinitely against such overwhelming odds. Every victory they achieved came at a cost. Casualties among their ranks, dwindling ammunition, and mounting fatigue. But giving up wasn't an option, not while there was still breath in his body. "We need reinforcements," he said firmly. "And I know where to get them." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You've got someone in mind?" Jack nodded. During his Delta Force days, he had worked closely with various military units, intelligence agencies, and private contractors around the world. Many of these individuals owed him favors, or at least respected his reputation enough to answer his call. More importantly, he had access to classified communication channels that could reach them directly. It wasn't much, but it was their best shot. Back inside the fortified basement of Jack's house, he activated a secure satellite link hidden within a locked compartment. The device was old-school technology by modern standards, but it was untraceable and encrypted beyond even the most sophisticated hacking attempts. Jack typed in a series of commands, inputting coordinates, descriptions of the alien forces, and notes on their tactics and vulnerabilities. He attached footage from the cameras scattered across the ranch, showing the scale of the invasion and the devastation wrought upon his property. Finally, he added a single line to the message: "Earth needs you, now." Within minutes, the transmission was sent, bouncing off satellites and relaying through secure networks across the globe. Jack leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. He didn't know how long it would take for help to arrive or if anyone would respond at all. But he had done everything he could. Now all they could do was wait. Hours passed and the battle raged on. The aliens launched wave after wave of attacks, determined to crush the human resistance once and for all. Their new reinforcements brought devastating firepower, turning the already ruined ranch into a wasteland of craters, flames, and twisted metal. Jack and his team fought valiantly, using every trick in their arsenal to slow down the invaders. They rigged explosives to create makeshift minefields, used hacked alien tech to jam communications, and employed guerrilla tactics to strike quickly and retreat before the enemy could retaliate. Despite their efforts, the toll was mounting. Several members of the team had been injured or killed, their bodies carried away by comrades who refused to leave them behind. Ammunition was running dangerously low, forcing them to scavenge weapons from fallen aliens. Even Jack, who had endured countless battles in his life, felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down on him. Yet, he pushed forward, driven by sheer willpower and the knowledge that failure meant the end of humanity itself. As night fell, casting the battlefield in shadow, something changed. A strange hum filled the air, different from the mechanical whine of alien engines. At first, Jack thought it might be another trick, a psychological tactic designed to unnerve them. But then, a voice crackled over their radios, speaking in clear, confident tones. "This is Colonel Harris of the United States Special Operations Command. We've received your distress signal, Jack. Reinforcements are inbound. Hold your position." Jack exchanged glances with Sarah, relief washing over both their faces. Help was coming, but would it arrive in time? Moments later, the skies above erupted in a dazzling display of lights. Massive starships materialized seemingly out of nowhere, dwarfing the alien fleet. These vessels bore Earth's insignia, symbols painted boldly on their hulls to declare their allegiance. They moved with precision, forming a protective perimeter around the ranch while unleashing a barrage of firepower that lit up the horizon. Cannons roared, missiles streaked through the air, and energy beams tore through alien ships with surgical accuracy. The invaders, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of Earth's forces, scrambled to regroup. Some tried to flee, retreating toward the safety of their motherships, while others launched desperate counterattacks. But they were no match for the combined might of humanity's defenders. Fighters soared overhead, engaging in dogfights with alien drones. Ground troops poured onto the battlefield, armed with reverse-engineered alien technology and advanced weaponry. For the first time since the invasion began, the tide of the battle shifted decisively in humanity's favor. Jack watched in awe as the scene unfolded before him. He had always known that Earth possessed untapped potential, but he had never imagined seeing it unleashed in such spectacular fashion. The starships hovering above weren't just prototypes. They were fully operational war machines, capable of standing toe-to-toe with extraterrestrial invaders. And leading the charge was none other than General Elena Rodriguez, a decorated officer whom Jack had served under during his Delta Force days. General Rodriguez's voice boomed over the comms, addressing the entire battlefield. "Attention all personnel. This is not just a fight for survival, it's a declaration of strength. Humanity will not bow to any force, earthly or otherwise. Stand your ground and show these invaders what we're made of." Inspired by her words, Jack and his team joined the renewed assault, fighting alongside the reinforcements. Together they pushed the aliens back, reclaiming lost ground inch by inch. Alien soldiers fell under concentrated fire, their armor unable to withstand the upgraded human weapons. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, raining debris across the landscape. By dawn, the invaders were in full retreat, abandoning their wounded and fleeing toward the upper atmosphere. But the victory came at a cost. The ranch was a charred ruin, its fields reduced to ash and its structures leveled to rubble. Bodies littered the ground, both human and alien, and the stench of smoke and burnt flesh hung heavy in the air. Jack stood amidst the devastation, staring at what was left of his home. Everything he had built, everything he had cherished, was gone. Yet, as he looked around at the faces of his comrades, the men and women who had fought beside him, he felt a flicker of hope. General Rodriguez approached him, her expression somber yet resolute. "You did good, Jack," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have known about this invasion until it was too late." Jack shook his head. "I didn't do it alone. None of us could have held out without backup. Those reinforcements saved our asses." Rodriguez nodded. "True. But don't underestimate the role you played. You gave humanity a fighting chance when it mattered most. That's why we're here, to make sure Earth stays ours." As the sun rose over the horizon, painting the scarred landscape in hues of gold and red, Jack allowed himself a moment of reflection. He had spent years trying to escape the violence of his past, seeking solace in the quiet simplicity of ranch life. But now he understood that peace was fragile. It required vigilance, sacrifice, and unity to protect. The aliens may have underestimated humanity, but they had learned a valuable lesson. Earth wasn't just a planet, it was a people, and those people would stop at nothing to defend their home. The battle was far from over. Reports indicated that the invaders were regrouping elsewhere, planning their next move. But for now, humanity had won a crucial victory. As Jack gazed at the stars above, he vowed silently to continue fighting, not just for himself, but for everyone who called Earth home. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready, because Jack Monroe wasn't just a retired soldier or a rancher, he was a protector, and he would stand his ground, no matter the odds. The victory at Jack Monroe's ranch was a turning point, but it wasn't the end. The alien invaders had been driven back, at least temporarily, but their presence in Earth's skies remained a looming threat. General Elena Rodriguez and her forces knew they couldn't afford to rest on their laurels. Humanity had shown its strength, but the war was far from over. The aliens were regrouping, retreating to higher orbits where they could plan their next assault. For now, the planet was safe, but everyone involved understood that this reprieve was fleeting. Jack stood amidst the wreckage of his ranch, surveying the devastation with a heavy heart. His once peaceful home was now a battlefield scarred by fire and ash. The barns were reduced to rubble, the fields trampled and scorched, and the animals he had cared for either scattered or killed. Even the air carried the acrid smell of burnt metal and flesh, a constant reminder of the violence that had unfolded here. Yet despite the destruction, Jack felt a strange sense of pride. This land had become the site of humanity's first stand against an extraterrestrial invasion, a symbol of resilience and defiance. General Rodriguez approached him, her expression calm but resolute. "We're mobilizing everything we've got," she said, handing him a tablet displaying maps and satellite images. "Our intel teams are tracking the alien fleet. They're consolidating near the moon, likely planning another attack. But we're ready for them." Jack studied the screen, taking in the data. The alien ships were massive, far larger than anything humanity had ever constructed, but they weren't invincible. The battle at the ranch had proven that. With reverse-engineered alien technology and the combined might of Earth's military forces, humanity finally had a fighting chance. Still, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this fight would demand sacrifices greater than anyone anticipated. "Where do you need me?" Jack asked, his voice steady. He had spent years trying to leave the chaos of war behind, but now he realized there was no escaping it, not when the stakes were this high. If humanity wanted to survive, it needed soldiers like him, people who understood the cost of war and were willing to pay it. Rodriguez gave him a long look before answering. "You've already done more than most," she said. "But we could use your experience. You know these creatures better than anyone else. We're forming a special task force to take the fight directly to them. Are you in?" Jack didn't hesitate. "Count me in." The days that followed were a blur of activity. Military bases around the world buzzed with preparations as governments pooled resources and shared intelligence. Engineers worked tirelessly to upgrade Earth's starships, incorporating alien tech scavenged from downed vessels. Pilots trained in simulated combat scenarios, learning how to outmaneuver alien drones and fighters. Soldiers drilled relentlessly, honing their skills for ground battles. And Jack? He became the face and the mind of humanity's counteroffensive. Tasked with leading reconnaissance missions, Jack worked closely with scientists and tacticians to analyze captured alien equipment. Every piece of technology provided clues about their weaknesses, strategies, and motivations. Through careful study, humanity learned that the aliens operated under a hive mind structure, with decisions flowing from a central queen-like figure aboard their mothership. If they could neutralize this leader, they might cripple the entire invasion force. Jack also played a key role in training the new recruits. Drawing on decades of experience, he taught them how to adapt to unpredictable situations, conserve resources, and exploit their enemies' vulnerabilities. "Don't think of them as invincible," he told the soldiers during one briefing. "They bleed just like us. Their armor is tough, but it has weak points. Aim true, stay sharp, and never let fear cloud your judgment." As the final preparations neared completion, humanity launched its largest offensive yet. A fleet of Earth starships led by General Rodriguez set course for the moon, where the alien armada had gathered. Jack accompanied the mission aboard one of the flagship vessels, flanked by elite operatives handpicked for their skill and bravery. Among them was Sarah Chen, whose leadership during the ranch battle had earned her a permanent spot on Jack's team. Together, they formed a formidable unit, ready to strike at the heart of the enemy. The journey to the moon was tense. Everyone aboard knew what was at stake. Failure meant the end of humanity, not just defeat, but extinction. As the fleet approached the alien stronghold, the tension grew palpable. The invaders' ships loomed ahead, dark silhouettes against the pale glow of the lunar surface. Energy shields crackled around their vessels and weapons bristled along their hulls. It was clear they were expecting a fight. "Weapons hot," General Rodriguez ordered over the comms. "All units, prepare for engagement." The moment the order came, Earth's fleet opened fire. Cannons roared, missiles streaked through space, and energy beams lashed out like lightning bolts. The aliens responded in kind, unleashing a barrage of firepower that lit up the void between worlds. Explosions erupted in dazzling bursts of light, illuminating the darkness with flashes of orange, blue, and white. Fighter jets zipped through the chaos, dodging enemy fire while launching precision strikes. The battle was fierce, chaotic, and utterly relentless. Amidst the carnage, Jack and his team boarded a stealth shuttle tasked with infiltrating the aliens' command ship. Protected by jamming devices that masked their presence, they slipped past the defensive perimeter and docked with the massive vessel. Inside, the atmosphere was eerie, cold, silent, and illuminated by pulsating lights. Alien symbols floated in midair, shifting and rearranging themselves like living code. Strange machinery hummed softly, exuding an aura of menace. "This place gives me the creeps," muttered one of the operatives, gripping his rifle tightly. "Focus," Jack snapped. "We're here for one thing, their queen. Find her, neutralize her, and get out." They moved deeper into the ship, following corridors that twisted unpredictably. Along the way, they encountered resistance, small groups of aliens patrolling the halls. Each skirmish was brief but intense, with Jack leading the charge and ensuring every shot counted. By the time they reached the heart of the vessel, their ammunition was running low and fatigue was setting in. But none of that mattered. They were close. The throne room, if it could be called that, was unlike anything they'd seen before. A cavernous chamber filled with holographic displays and floating platforms, it housed the alien queen herself. She was enormous, towering over her guards with sleek armored limbs and glowing eyes that radiated intelligence and malice. Around her neck hung a crystalline device pulsing with energy, clearly serving as the nexus of the hive mind network. "There," Jack whispered, pointing at the crystal. "That's what we need to destroy." Without hesitation, the team sprang into action. Jack laid down suppressive fire while Sarah and Marcus planted explosives around the chamber. The Queen reacted instantly, unleashing a torrent of energy, blasts that forced them to scatter. One operative went down, hit in the chest, but Jack grabbed him and dragged him behind cover. "No one gets left behind," he shouted, returning fire with deadly accuracy. Finally, the charges were set. Detonation. In 10 seconds, Marcus yelled, "Fall back." The team retreated as fast as they could, narrowly avoiding blasts from the enraged Queen. Just as they reached the exit, the explosives detonated in a blinding flash of light. The crystal shattered, sending shockwaves rippling through the ship. The Queen collapsed, her body convulsing as the hive mind dissolved. Without their leader, the remaining aliens faltered, their movements becoming erratic and uncoordinated. By the time Jack and his team escaped the ship, the tide of the battle had turned decisively in humanity's favor. Deprived of their central command, the alien fleet began to disintegrate, individual ships fleeing in all directions. Earth's forces pursued them relentlessly, ensuring that none escaped to regroup. When the last alien vessel exploded in a brilliant cascade of light, cheers erupted across the human fleet. Back on Earth, news of the victory spread quickly. Cities erupted in celebration, people pouring into the streets to honor the heroes who had saved their planet. World leaders issued statements praising the courage and unity of humanity, vowing to rebuild and strengthen defenses against future threats. Medals were awarded, parades were held, and monuments were erected to commemorate the fallen. For Jack, however, the aftermath was bittersweet. Standing on the porch of a temporary shelter provided by the military, he gazed at the stars above. His ranch was gone, destroyed in the opening act of a war that had reshaped the world. Yet, as he reflected on everything that had happened, he felt a sense of purpose he hadn't known in years. He had fought not just for himself, but for everyone who called Earth home, and though the scars of battle lingered, both on the land and in his heart, he knew one thing for certain. Humanity had proven itself capable of standing toe-to-toe with the stars. The aliens may have come looking for conquest, but they left. Terrified of the indomitable spirit of a planet that refused to bow. And Jack Monroe, Delta Force legend and reluctant hero, had played a crucial role in showing them why.